Hey guys, what's up? It's Lizzie Jane. I hope your Thursday is off to a beautiful start. I hope your week has been lovely. And I think right now we are just in a point in time that we all just need to come together, act as a unit, and try and move forward honestly in the best way possible. So today on the podcast, I have a very special guest joining me. Her name is Olivia Mancuso. You have seen her in the content creation world of electronic dance music. You have seen her in a consultant position. She is co-founder and operator of Chicago Music Nexus, which happens annually in Chicago, one of the biggest electronic dance music panels to kind of uplift professionals and artists within our space internationally and nationally. And I am so excited to attend this year. I will be going to my first Chicago Music Nexus, and I am super, super excited for that. She also hosts her own podcast called Elevated Frequencies. It is a weekly podcast that helps artists turn their passion into profit. And that is exactly what we're going to talk about today. She is incredibly knowledgeable. I could have talked to her for hours on end. And if you are a creator in any art form, doesn't matter if it's EDM or not, or you're wanting to work in the music industry, or you're simply an entrepreneur and you are working a day job or a salary paying job for another employer, and you have a side hustle or a side business that you are continuously developing and maybe hitting some obstacles and bumps in the road like we all do, this episode is for you. I personally feel that 100% when you are pursuing your passion as a financial endeavor and trying to cross that bridge, and you've worked an extremely long time with long, hard hours. When opportunities start to arise, the last thing you want to do is say no, but that in fact is sometimes the best thing to do to effectively grow your business in the long run. So let's just hop into it. Again, if you love what we're doing, please make sure that you like, subscribe, comment. We spread by word of mouth here at the Lizzie Jane podcast, and make sure that you are tuning in to my show on Insomniac Radio. It happens every day, Monday through Saturday, 4 to 5 p.m. Pacific daytime. And I am super pumped for my show today on Insomniac Radio. And we are working on something really cool to kind of intertwine the podcast and my show with Insomniac. So stay tuned on that. And I can't wait to let you guys know more about it. As always, I love you guys so much. Thank you for listening. And let's hop into this week's episode with special guest Olivia Mancuso. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
It's so nice to meet you virtually and be in the presence of another podcaster. It's one of my favorite things. I love our little community.
Absolutely. How's your day going so far? Like, how is life in Chicago treating you so far this week?
It's good. I had a dentist appointment this morning, which is my least favorite thing. I see you're also tatted up. Like, I have so many tattoos, whatever. No pain in the world compares to going to the dentist for me.
Doesn't.
It's traumatizing. So that was this morning, but other than that, doing well. I'm not in it right now, but I just announced my new podcast studio, which I have my first episode in coming out later this week. So I finally have a big girl setup, which I'm excited about.
Oh my God, that's so exciting. I think that's like all of the podcasters' dreams. I just moved into this new space behind us. It was a child's room when we got the house, and it was like purple, and you can still see the yellow trim. And I am in the process of fully transforming. We have like the velvet chair, and we've got some like couches back there. And then I'm like doing all of my paneling, and we're going to have some like shelves and cool graffiti art, and creating a space of your own, especially when you're choosing what type of vibe you want to have in your podcast, I feel like is so important. And I feel like there's this parallel between studio producers. Like, every artist and producer starts as like a closet dungeon producer. And I feel like most podcast hosts start in their bedroom or in their, makeshift studio office. And now you have your own space, which is so exciting. So tell me about the space and like what you're excited for as far as like the environment and atmosphere it's going to kind of like thrive in for the podcast coming up.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that. I really wanted to, and I'll send you some pictures. I wanted to make a creative space that, like artists feel comfortable in, because I think sometimes, and I've seen where you record and yours looks really comfortable and inviting and amazing, but there's a lot of podcasts out there like outside of the dance music niche where like it just looks like a podcast studio. It's kind of like copy paste. And I didn't want to do that. Obviously, you're limited with certain like audio requirements, right? Putting the paneling up on the walls, things like that. But my studio is really colorful. Purple and green are my favorite colors. I mean, so is black, obviously, and I feel like it's probably yours too.
Yes. Oh,
The,
yeah.
the walls are painted black. But yeah, I have everything is from vintage stores or thrifted. Everything is secondhand except for like the rug, because I really wanted to, utilize like Chicago's creative community. There's so many cool vintage shops. All the artwork is from small stores. There's like this place called Sideshow Gallery that like a lot of my stuff in my home office is from. Um, and so I just wanted it to be like a true creative space where when artists are in town and they come through, they can like kick back, relax, have a drink if they want, whatever, and just be like, wow, yeah, this is like a chill spot. I don't feel like I'm going to like go do media, you know?
Absolutely. And I think that's like so important, especially with the guests that you and I have, even though they're not in the same like sonic bucket. And I feel like I aspire to talk to a lot more industry professionals just like yourself. And like that's a huge goal for this coming season. But having a space where people feel comfortable to open up, like where I used to record is in an art gallery, and it's really change art out all the time, and it's attached to a nightclub in Denver that's a bit well known called Temple, and that's like kind of they call it the spaceship. It's like the home for hard dance, technos, tech house stuff, and it's a really like interesting, like artsy, huge compound. But sometimes I go in there and it's like sterile, and I feel like it's just not always the vibe that I want. So to be able to have another artist or industry professional come in and sit down and feel like they're in like their living room or their studio, that's the goal. And that's how I feel like you're creating the most conducive environment to get the answers out of the guests that you want, because
Mhm.
so many of the individuals that we both have on are like quote unquote media trained, and you can always tell when somebody's media trained and they kind of spew off the same answer over and over again. But a lot of these guys, when they came into the scene, podcast didn't like exist. Like it did,
Right.
but at least not to the level in which they do now. And I feel like we're in this really weird era, and I don't know if it was post pandemic or what, but like the fourth wall's been like kind of like hammered down, and now people really want to see what this industry is truly about, and like how they can actually create financial stability or, accomplish their passion and turn it into a career path. And I feel like that's so much of what you do. And I would just like for people listening, can you just like give us a little bit of a background of how you got into music and why you chose this little pocket as where you found yourself holding the most value in our like creative space?
Yeah, yeah, it's an amazing question. In terms of getting into dance music, that's when I was 13 years old. I heard Armand Van Helden, "I Want Your Soul" in I was 14 because I was a freshman in high school, and I was like, that's it, I'm hooked. And at the time, you were weird if you listened to that music, if you weren't listening to like hip hop or whatever, but I didn't care. So I've been a fan. I'm 33 now, so it's 20 years, right? But in terms of how I formulated my podcast, it's interesting because I actually worked with some amazing podcast coaches who helped me with like the logistics of setting up a podcast and, all the elements that go into it. And at that time in my life, like I thought I wanted to build a podcast that was more geared towards fans and who were kind of looking for like elevated experiences, hence the name Elevated Frequencies, who weren't like, necessarily in like the, in the throes of like their raving life anymore, but they still like to go out, blah, blah, blah. And as I released probably like 5, 10 episodes, I realized that one, all the feedback I was getting, who's early adopters of the show, were from DJs. But two, I was kind of aging out of the scene. I don't want to say aging out of the scene because I'm still very much in it. I'm more in it than ever before, but I'm going out less and less. And so I'm like, I don't know if I can be the conduit, the person to talk about these things from the fan side, because I'm going out less and less and just enjoying the music, from the comfort of my home, or just going to daytime events, or really just like saving up my energy and going out once a month or whatever it is. And so I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I was a TV journalist, got out of the business, got into corporate marketing, hated it because it was so slow compared to journalism. And so I decided to start my own business. And I was like, if I can, which is a marketing agency, I said, if I could figure out how to do this, then I can teach others how to do it in a way that's like approachable, digestible. Because as a TV reporter, that's what I had to do. I had to become a mini expert on a topic like utility bill issues or taxes or like fraud or like whatever it was for the day. And so kind of took all those skills and I was like, okay, we're refocusing this show. Thankfully I caught it early. Like I said, like 10 episodes in. I'm like, and this is going to be about how to treat yourself as an entrepreneur, as an artist. And people have really resonated with it. I'm grateful. It also ruffles a lot of feathers, which I wasn't ready for, but like, hey, I'll take it. I have pretty thick skin. A lot of people see artistry and like business as polar opposites, but where I'm standing, you need to take care of your business stuff and understand it so that you have the freedom to be creative. Because if you don't know how to do your taxes until it's April 13th and the deadline is in 2 days and you're freaking out and you like are going to owe all this money, or like you set up an LLC with your DJ duo business partner and then all of a sudden you guys have a falling out and you're arguing over who owns what, that is going to thwart your creativity more than anything else. And so that's what I'm trying to teach people. And like it is very niche. I don't, I know it's not like commercially palatable right now, like some other entrepreneur focused podcasts are, but I'm standing 10 toes down on it.
Well, one, thank you. You're fucking badass. And I think it's crazy because everything from like a touring artist standpoint and someone who has completely, it's not like failed upwards. Like if I were to do it again, I think every artist is like, I would do this differently and I would do this differently and I would do this differently. And I think that any music podcast, like just what you said, I think people who have podcasts typically were podcast consumers beforehand or fell in love with anything from Joe Rogan to your daily, feel good mental health podcast. And I think any podcast in music is niche, just like how you have all of these. I think there's so many podcasts now that are kind of like, we'll all host X, Y, and Z guests from all these different fields and topics and techniques. And even though they get, millions and millions and millions of views, it's kind of like putting this on a parallel path to an artist talking about a super fan and comparing them to a super listener. I have so many people who come to my shows that, quite frankly, I don't think they listen to my music. I know they listen to my podcast. And it's the same thing with like people who listen to your podcast or Mr. Bill's podcast or Nick's headliner mindset podcast. It's people who are like really hungry to learn. And I think there's a lot of those individuals that listen to all of ours. And then there's a lot of individuals that have their favorite one, but we're like appealing to this really niche demographic that I think has a lot to give. And I think the reason that we do it, whether you're an artist, you're a podcaster, or you're like, I think anything but the top music business personnel industry human, you are not in entertainment for the money. You're in it because you like love it and you want to make this like impact to one person. And then I say you win. We were talking about the panel that Sherm, who's also from Chicago, who you all have put a conference on together that went so well in Chicago this past year. He did a panel on Saturday in Denver for house music, an ever-growing scene in this market. And I just said to the room full of 20 people, if one person walks out of here and knows who I was and didn't know who I was when they came in, I won. And I feel like from our podcast standpoint, especially how yours is so like educational and informal, and you have people on who are really talking about the business. If one person can walk away learning something, which I literally learn one thing every single time I listen to your podcast, I think that's like a win. And every artist I know who have toured with literally has gone through every nightmare red flag situation you just said. They waited on their taxes. They were in a duo group and guess what? The duo group didn't work out anymore, or they registered their LLC poorly, or, there's a whole list of things. And I will speak from personal experience. financial stress as a creator is the number one worst thing for creativity. You just said that, but I've like lived it for years at a time. I've gone in it was 2020 and 2019, and I got my first national tours offers for 2020 before we knew the pandemic was coming. And I quit my job and I went all in and I did all of this stuff. And then COVID happened. And I know a lot of people taking the pandemic out of it have just gone all in because a lot of people say go all in. And now looking back 5 years later, me as a nationally touring artist, I believe that touring money is not financial security, and at any drop of a hat, somebody can come and just take it away. Or what happens if you want to take time to write an album, or what happens if you have a child or you're getting married or there's family issues. It's not your everyday check that's hitting your bank that you're getting a W-2 and everything's going to be okay. So now when I look at my income, it's like this really crazy puzzle pie of my taxes are a nightmare, yes, but do I stress and worry about money? 9 times out of 10, no. So I think it's like a really interesting way to try and get an artist from like point A to point B, especially when we have such a tunnel vision of what's supposed to happen for our
Right.
career. And like, what would you say? Because I know you work with like so many beginner artists, even though you have I think you just had Mark Knight on, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
even though you have like legends on your podcast to like speak to that next generation, what would you say to like some of like the Chicago artists that you work with, or just artists in general, or conventions that you've spoke about, like how to just like start that journey of like creating financial freedom for yourself so it doesn't get in the way of like taking value away from your project and also just like stressing you out?
Yeah. So I would have two answers depending on the person. One would be for someone who's not as entrepreneurial, which I don't say is a bad thing. Not everybody wants to be super entrepreneurial, and I think that's okay. I'm always championing it, but it's not for everybody, so that's fine. So for someone who's not and kind of just wants to like focus on making music and eventually, do the whole gigging thing and make a lot of money from it, pick one form of like a side hustle and give yourself 6 months to a year to figure it out. Whether that's trying to get songs, picked for sync licensing, whether that's like doing audio engineering for a podcast or for like some sort of show, like use your skills in an applicable way that's not necessarily directly tied to your artistry. I mean, there's websites like edmghostproductions.com, and that's not like ghost producing for other artists. That's ghost producing for like podcast show intros or like company, like corporate video. Like there's so many different ways you can use your skill set. So pick one and know that it's probably going to take 6 months to a year to really get it to start moving. But then that's something that can be another revenue stream for you, to keep you afloat. Now, for the entrepreneurial person, I would say book yourself. And what I mean by that is I've been making a lot of content about this. Start your own pop-up series, create your own thing. I have taken stock of all the friends that I've made in this industry, just from doing the podcast, because that's how I've gotten introduced to artists, in this deeper way. The ones that I'm closest with and talk to every single week, like shout out Kai William, for example, they're the ones doing their own thing. Kai William created Developed, which is a similar conference. It's a smaller but more like intensive, like you get more one-on-one support through his workshop series Developed. I just had a student, I call him a student, he was a Patreon student that I worked with, who is an artist out of Long Island, and he took my advice on throwing a pop-up and he did it, and for Long Island, which like doesn't have a lot of house music events. So whatever that may be, and know that like that's not going to necessarily be an immediate path to profitability. But when you are developing your own thing and you're building your own thing over here, and then things on this side might come by, you might get a gig offer, you might get this, you might get that, but then it might be, quiet for a while. So you go back over here and you continue to build your own thing. And that's something that no one can ever take away from you. And again, it might not be profitable right away, but it will open so many doors for you, more doors than you could ever imagine. And so figuring out like, is it a pop-up series? Is it artist education? Like, is it like what West End just did where he had, basketball and fishing and a workout, like whatever that is, build something for yourself because that's going to give you the financial longevity. Whereas gigs are going to come and go. You're going to get older. You're not going to be able to sustain that forever. So those are the two routes that I suggest to people, kind of based on like where the, analysis I've done of their personalities and what they seem open to.
Absolutely. Thank you for that answer. That's lovely. And I would say, does that, from an artist standpoint, would you say that that goes hand in hand with also potentially, unless it's like a side hustle that is like, this is more for like the entrepreneurial mindset? Cool. Would you say that that also can help build your brand in a different type of way that is not just like the marshmallow hat visual
Yeah.
representation way?
Oh my God. It's a signal to the marketplace that you're someone who takes yourself seriously. You are someone who takes initiative. A lot of people don't take initiative. A lot of people have ideas and they never execute. And so you're building a brand of to the back end of the industry, the people behind the scenes of, oh, this is a professional who like has a deeper understanding of the industry because they're throwing their own events. And so they know logistics of X, Y, and Z. And also, yeah, you're becoming associated with something bigger. Like that is why Sherman and I put on Chicago Music Nexus and why we're going to continue to put it on, because we want to be associated with artist education. And the tricky part, well, the way that this can be freeing long term. It's interesting because I just had Josh Baker on my podcast. That episode will come out in a couple weeks, but he's like the true definition of an entrepreneur. He has the Hide and Seek Festival in Manchester, I believe, or Leeds. I can't remember, one of the two. He has the You and Me Party series. He has Syntho Hub, which is an artist education platform. And then he has his label, and he is the face of all things. And he said, maybe one day I'll want to exit from Syntho Hub. Like, I'm building this up so I have that ability. Being able to have an exit on something, meaning your face no longer has to be attached to it to make money, is so important. It's something that I have been thinking about nonstop, because you know this as a podcaster and an artist. Every artist knows this. You are obviously synonymous with your brand because you are the one playing. That means that if you get sick, if shit hits the fan and anything, it's all on you. If you can build something like a successful party series or even a label that doesn't necessarily have like your face, like you're not like front and center of it. If you can build something that's like Chicago Music Nexus will grow beyond us. Like, that's the plan. And I don't need to be moderating every panel, being the one promoting, because like, I have more followers than the Chicago Music Nexus account. So I'm not going to eventually have to be the one doing all the promotion. Like, it will run as its own faceless thing. I think it's hard for a lot of artists and creatives to think that way because we have egos. We love doing this thing. Egos in a good way. Like, we love being, at the center of this and building something around us. But like, if you want to have a peaceful life, like building something that it does not have you at the center, but utilizes your skill sets, is a very smart move.
Absolutely. And it's crazy because like I just turned 28 and I'm already in that to be sane, but I also love working every second of every day, but I have this full understanding. And I think speaking from like, we can just hop into like the woman standpoint too. How we look, what our appearance is, how we're
Yep.
taking care of ourselves, how that's attached to our brand. Does that happen for guys? 110%. But there's always like this, and I'm sure you've spoken to either other creators, influencers, teachers, artists, you kind of have this like invisible timer that's kind of
It's
starting to click down.
it's
And
crazy. It's
and my
crazy.
biggest thing in my like, because I am such a homebody and I always have been, I would say I was never like this. And I would love to know about like your early raving days. Like, I was never a candy kid. And I think that that's like a very like outlying thing. Like, since I was honestly 19 years old, 20 years old, like 2 years into raving, I just said, that's what I want to do. Like, I'm just going to stop going to these. And I've now in the last few years understood how important it is to be a part of the crowd and understand where the crowd is at. And you can't ever forget this because it's like that little trend that's going on. It's like, this is why we do what we do, or like,
This is what
what's
it's all
even the
about.
point? Yeah, this
Yeah.
is what it's all about. And it's like, that's what it's all about. But I was always like, how do I go from point A to point Z? And people within the state of Florida, like Nitty Gritty, who Grammy nominated, Part of Side Piece, worked with Pitbull, Diplo, et cetera, et cetera. I would listen to these people talk because we didn't have this huge, huge, huge community, but we had a big one when I was coming up. And they would always just say, when you're at the rave, someone is at home working. And I was like, that's going to be me. And
Mhm.
I'm at this like weird point where I'm like, I never want to not be able to work in music. So how do I get to do that when my timer has run out as a woman being on stage in a nightclub, which I don't want to do when I'm 40 years old. So
Right.
how do you create something to, withstand that longevity? Is that going into scoring? Is that going into publishing? Is that, creating what you guys have started to create in Chicago, that you can go into full giving back to the community because that is what warms your heart. And I think that goes on in a lot of people's minds that like aren't going to be Tiesto, because everyone, like every career has a shelf life and every career's journey is different. You see people now more than ever that are able to, follow the formula, and while it may not be a foolproof formula, we're in this age of nostalgia where you can do the remixes and you can nail the content and you can accelerate that timeline if you're not really looking for quote unquote potential longevity. And we see people who have career lifespans that do a shit ton of things within 2 to 5 years. And then we see people who have been around the block for 25 years and they kind of have nothing to worry about. So it's like identifying that path and then saying, how do we get there? And everyone's like journey is just so different. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's
Well,
kind of weird.
yeah, you gotta identify what's important to you in your life, and how does your artistry interfere or enhance those goals outside of music. Like
Hmm.
I'm a homebody too, and like I haven't said this publicly anywhere yet, and I didn't think I was ever going to because it's not, I don't know, it's weird. Maybe I'll look back at this and laugh, but like I have been getting so much feedback over the past year that I should be an artist manager. And I've always said, no, 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 no,
I
no.
see that. I
Thank
totally see
because I
that.
know it's meant as like as a compliment. And I got that feedback recently from a Wasserman agent who I really trust. And it kind of sent me into a spiral because I was like, that is not what I want to do. I do not want to be on the road all the time. I don't, quite frankly, don't want to be babysitting. And I know good artists don't need to be babysat, but like I feel like that's all I do in as a woman in general, right? We're kind of just like we're the ones who are organized. We've got the logistics down. And it's like to do that on a much more intense scale is just not conducive to like how I see my life, like when I'm 50 years old, which I'll still be working, but like
Mhm.
I love working, but that's just not, I wouldn't want to even do that now because I like being home. And so, I'm kind of at this point where I'm thinking about, what do the next 20 years look like? Because you mentioned being a woman in this industry, the feedback now that I'm starting to gain more traction, the feedback that I'm getting is so all over the map. Like I've gotten the feedback indirectly from men in this industry that I'm too come off too professional and it's like scary. And then I get the feedback that like I dress like I want to impress men and so they don't want to associate with me there and it's like, "Oh my God, like can I just live? Like can I just." And again, I have thick skin so it's fine, but I'm seeing how like my appearance already interferes with how I'm perceived. And so that is something that I do not want to deal with 20 years from now. And I've had a heads up on this because I worked in the TV news business and I
Mhm.
saw women anchors. If you go look at like any TV news station in the country, you will most likely see on the evening news desk a man who is probably 20 years older than the woman anchor next to him. And I'm like over complaining about it. Like my job is to try to change the status quo just by being myself. I'm not going to sit here and bitch and moan. But that being said, it's like I'm not trying to deal with these sorts of just like they're just silly issues that like slow me down. It's like why like
Mhm.
I just want to like railroad to getting things done, whether it's with Chicago Music Nexus, my podcast, any other sort of collaboration I'm doing. And so yeah, I just know that the future of my place in the industry has to be something that I don't need to be necessarily standing side by side. I can be operating from the background. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, but it's
I
important for every
definitely agree.
artist. Like if you want to have kids, like you said, if you want to tour, like can you and I know a lot of artists still do. Like I remember interviewing Hot Since 82 at ARC and he was like, I have an amazing family support system. He has I think 2 or 3 kids now. Um and I don't know how he does it because he looks so young and like refreshed. But that he's an outlier, I think, for sure.
Absolutely. And I think if you want to do that post having children, you just have to have such a like mental fortitude of what is job, what is acceptable. You know, when you're at that point, you're so far past it being this party. And I think that what you said as well earlier, where people are like, "Oh, you may come off or you may be perceived as too professional or too X, Y, and Z." It's crazy because that's how I was raised, not given the industry that I work in. Like I originally went to college to work on the Hill in political science and international
Wow.
affairs with like a minor in Russian. And like I 6 months into that nightmare of college debt said, why am I going to do this when this is like not what I love? And I haven't been doing this my whole life. I just graduated high school and was told, well, it's time to grow up and I need to go back to doing what I love. But I always have had that really professional approach to things because we've seen the other side of it. We've seen what happens when you're messy and God forbid you're a girl and something happens because it is held 10 times more over your head. And it's just facts. It's like, it's hard because you don't want to complain because our industry has come such a long way. Even when I entered the industry in 2018, 2019, I still, as far as women artists, especially more in like the bass, melodic bass, drum and bass lane, I really could only point to like 5 corners in stateside and say, well, these girls are also on my level. And then there's like not a ton in between. And then there's like Rez and Alice in Wonderland and
Yeah.
like the big, big women. And now there's women everywhere. Now there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of girl artists that I know in all corners. And then on the other side, there's been agents that I've seen promoted at UTA, at Wasserman, lots of lovely women who are assistants or even up to like VP levels of all of these different divisions in said companies. And then people like yourself and people in artist management. So we've come really far, but also what we're saying is simply data. Everyone has been told what you've been told or what I've been told. And at
Mhm.
one point, it's like, I think that you just have to ignore it all. And you have to say,
Yeah.
am I in this for like my love and passion of it? And I'm able to ignore those voices, even though like the person is just like the thief of joy and we will all no matter what we do be compared to one another. I think it's just like finding each other like on things like this or community outlets or panels or labels and A&Rs that are trying to push women to like try and stand together because
Mhm.
I don't know if there's ever going to be a change.
Yeah.
Like I think in any industry you go in, just like you said in news and TV and journalism, anything entertainment focused, whether you're in Hollywood or you're in Miami or you're a model or you're X, Y, and Z, it's gonna be the same shit, which is crazy. It sucks.
Yeah, it does, but like you said, there's no use in complaining about it. The best way to try to enact change is to just be who you are and be unapologetic about it. And so, yeah, I mean, it also it just steals your energy when you dwell on stuff that's unfair. I mean, I could do that all day. And sure, I slip into that sometimes. We all do. We're human.
I'll do.
But as an entrepreneur, as someone who is responsible for their own income, like I'm the one who, makes or breaks whether I get paid this month. I do not have time to dwell on anything. So it's just
Yes.
always onwards and upwards.
Well, and it's funny because I always notice because I am just born an overthinker. I started going to therapy for the first time in my life like 3 months ago, and
Amazing.
I'm like, this is what I want to fix. And I'm like an overthinker until the day I die. And when I don't have a lot going on, because I always have so much going on, if there's like 20% of my glass empty to just, relax or
Yeah.
like be a couch potato or whatever, I start just going into these little holes of like, could you be doing this better? Could you be doing whatever? You should be working right now. And I think that it's just like we we thrive on our like everything like really sitting on our shoulders, and it's a really interesting way to live life when I'm sure you have in your own community. Like, I think it's really important to have friends outside of music or a significant
100%.
other or X, Y, and Z where, they go to work like 9 to 3 or 9 to 4, and then they're like done. And you're kind of like, that's like an amazing life, but I could never, I think I would end up in so much trouble. I'm like, I don't know what I would do with myself.
Totally.
But it's also just like a privilege for us being able to make a living out of our passion, but we have to make it happen. And I think you said this before, is so many people have great ideas. It's not easy. It takes a lot of effort to have a great idea, but I think putting a plan behind that great idea and actually executing it and getting it across the finish line, like 1 in 1,000 people actually do. What
Yeah.
world would be like a different place?
I know most people do not execute for a million different reasons. And a lot of people move slow. They move too slow. I'm someone who is, and this only has happened. Like I always tell people, I stepped through a portal when I turned 30, and then I learned about astrology and got into it. I realized it's called a Saturn return. So 30 is like a very transformative year for a lot of people. I think especially women. And my life has been better since. But like I switched from a person who like led life in fear of things and like fear that the sky was always falling to being fearless and just having a bias for action. And if something doesn't work out, I'll fix it later rather than like, gathering all my intel and taking slow steps to make a decision. I make decisions so fast. Like I just say yes to things, yes or no. Like I say no as, quickly as I say yes. And if it's the wrong one, like I'll fix it. Like now I'm not talking about, like big things, whatever. But like for the most part, like in business at this stage, like I'm not running like a, multi-million dollar venture capital firm, right? I'm running a business where it's me and a couple subcontractors. I've started to build trust in myself that I know that like I make good decisions and so I just make them faster. And right now as I'm trying to figure out like what's next for me because I kind of, I've always been someone who's had like a game plan and I always encourage that to artists. I'm big on vision boarding and making quarterly vision boards, especially because I think when we try to make vision boards that are like a 5 year, even 1 year, something you might learn something that you're like, oh, actually, I don't want that, or I discovered this and I really want this. And so making quarterly vision boards actually helps you attain your goals because they're achievable. It's like, okay, this is a 3 month goal. It's not like a 15, 20, 25 month goal. And I've always been that person. What's interesting is when I started my podcast, I had to leave it open a little bit because I was like, this is new territory for me. Like you said, the podcasting community is small. It's been like you, Emma, Sherm, Nick, like Aid, very small. Like there's not that many. And so I had to leave it open. I'm like, let's kind of see where this takes me. And now I'm at a point where it's like, okay, now you've built some brand recognition. You need to make a decision on what's next. And initially, I was like, okay, let me wait until like year 2 of Chicago Music Nexus is done, then I'll decide. And I had that conversation with the Wasserman agent a couple weeks ago, who told me that I should be an agent or a manager. I'm like, fuck no, I'm figuring this out right now. And
Yeah.
so just having that like bias for action and just like being willing to take initiative and if you mess up, figuring it out later, I think is such an amazing, like, it's just like a muscle that you start to flex and it gets bigger, right? And so I'm always telling the artist, I occasionally work one-on-one with artists. I always tell them to just make a decision, whether it's on the track whether it's on like your brand, like you can
Creative fatigue is
yeah, you can
terrible.
it is, and you can always iterate. Like nothing's ever going to be perfect the first time out of the gate. Like we did Chicago Music Nexus year one without a graphic designer. Okay, that was like not by choice, but like by out of necessity for, conserving funds because we thought it was more important that all the everyone got food included with their ticket. So now we can have a graphic designer, like we're iterating, we're elevating the brand. So I think a lot of people get stuck because they want it to be perfect straight out the gate, and so they don't ever take action, and that's what happens. And then you like really start to not like yourself because you realize like being someone who doesn't take action impacts mental health more than anyone realizes, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like you're literally talking directly to me because I've been through all of that. And I think especially creative people, whether they're an artist or they're a creative director or they're an industry personnel, we are all perfectionists. And
Yep.
like I like truly, truly, truly believe that. Like I know more artists than not that hold on to their songs and never let them go. And that is myself included. And that's something in the last year that I've gotten so much better at. And I also, especially as a woman, because I think that huge late 20s to 30 is like a huge transformational step. I have so many friends who are like in their early 30s, and I have so many friends who are like my age in their mid to late 20s, and we're all like thinking we're gonna walk outside and get hit by a car. Like this is like our like this is like it. Like if we don't make X, Y, and Z happen by the time we're 30, or if this doesn't happen, or if that doesn't happen. And then I see all my friends in their 30s and I'm like, okay, I'm really like excited to be there. So I'm just trying to like think that I'm in my
Yeah.
30s now.
I I'm telling you, your 30s are the best decade. Like I can't even believe I feel like this was gate kept from me. First of all, like I'm healthier. I feel like I look
Mhm.
better because I make better choices than I did when I was like 21, 22. Like you
Yeah.
compare. I also have more money now. That's the thing. People start to give you more money when you're in your 30s because they trust that you're not a child anymore. Like there's just this perception that
I'm
like
still a child. It's
yeah,
wild.
I
I
know,
don't
and
know.
yeah, and I feel like I am sometimes too. And then I'm like, oh no, like I'm an adult. Like when I was at the dentist this morning, I was like, "You're so brave, Olivia, for going to the dentist." And I'm like, "No, you're not. Like this is what you're supposed to do." Like this was my inner dialogue this morning, because I hate the dentist. But it like your 30s are amazing, and like nothing started happening for me until I turned 30, and I'm 33 now. So like you've achieved so many things already as an artist and as a podcaster, like just think what's on the horizon. So like having that positive, I'm not like saying people should take action, do everything now because it's all gonna like run away from them. No, it's like take action now because your best days are yet to come and imagine how much better they'll be if you start today, you know?
Yes. Yes. I always say that is like in a really, funny, immature way. I go, the sooner you stop, you will start, or no, the sooner you start, you will stop sucking. And I say that to all of like my like
Yep.
Patreon students or like anyone who just wants to do it. I'm like, get the DJ board off of Marketplace, download the license free version of Ableton. Go to YouTube University, go to ChatGPT and say, I want to sound like this. What's the crash course that I have to look at? Like, just do it and commit to it and create. I think a lot of it is what you said is like creating that realistic timeline and making space and prioritizing. I feel like time is something that a lot of people do talk about, but it's not as like focused on. Like time when you're doing what we're doing or you're in an industry like ours is everything. Where is your time going to go? Because we now live in a world where this phone takes up so much of our time, and
Hmm.
it is now integrated into the puzzle pie of how to become a successful artist if you would like to tour and perform. And while we talked about this in the panel a lot Saturday, while music is like, are you going to build your project house of straw or are you going to build your project house of bricks? Music is that step one. It is the first foundation, it is the first block. If your music isn't there, it's going to be really, really hard to stand the test of time and longevity. And, like AP, he's a talent buyer here for 128 Productions in Colorado. He did the Dom Dollar event and he does a lot for our community. And like, there's gems in the pile, like AP, that are like, I really hate what social media really hate how it is so focused on, because it still doesn't directly translate into ticket sales. You could have
Right.
5 million followers and all of your videos could be viral, and then you can't sell 10 tickets in any city. So he's like, it's really confusing as a talent buyer where I want to bring in new talent, but we have this like muddy gray area now that is almost like a bit fooling or a bit manipulative is as to if you can actually bring people through the door. Because at the end of the day, all of the talent buyers and all the promoters, they really, really care about your value in each city. But when you're an up and coming act, a lot of that goes out the door, and now it relies on the world of social media and where your numbers are at. Because
Totally.
most of those big guys, the Insomniacs of the world, the AEGs, the Live Nations, the Disco Donnies, so many of them are like, where are their numbers? So I would love to ask you, you know, how important do you feel like social media is in the current market for an up and coming artist, also establishing your brand and finding what's like real and authentic to you for it to be sustainable? Because you'll see people go crazy with it and then they'll disappear off the face of the earth because they're so burnt out.
Totally. I'm really glad you brought this up. So I want to frame this by saying, you know, Sherm and I selling tickets to Chicago Music Nexus was a joint effort. The half, we're pretty much like split, like maybe 60-40% of selling tickets, 60 from him, 40 from me. And I did that with less than 10,000 followers at the time. Okay. So, and those were $150 tickets. It wasn't a cheap ticket. So, yes, follower count does not translate to how many people you can bring out IRL. And that is why I think it's so important, why I hammer for people to build their own events, build their own experiences, because that is how you build super fans, the people who will show up to your events in real life. I know lots of artists who don't have massive online followings, but they can get out 100, 200 people to a show. So it's a separate thing. It also building more like similarly, how building a big following online is not going to sell you more tickets. It's also not going to make you more money. In fact, when I'm more focused on social media, when I have like high performing videos, I realize I'm not as focused on the money making parts of my business, because I get seduced by like, oh, this video is going viral and this video is going viral, and so I want to make another one, and so it is a seductress. Now, that being said, there is an amazing opportunity that all artists, all business owners, everybody has that we did not have 10, 15, 20 years ago, which is it is a free tool to promote yourself. You don't have to pay for PR. You don't have to go you spend $10,000 to produce a music video. You don't have to go take out a billboard. You don't have to go pass out flyers. All those things still have value, but it has democratized the process. And I know a lot of, curmudgeons are going to say, oh, but it's given rise to the social media influencer. And I get accused of that all the time. Like people say, like, oh, you're just trying to build social media DJs or influencer DJs. I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't even have that many followers. Like, so I understand why people feel a certain type of way about it, but like it is just another tool in the toolbox to get yourself out to people who are not going to hear of you otherwise if you're not touring. There's so much noise out there. If you use social media as a way to build the super fans rather than a way to build virality and to build a high number of followers, it's going to be your best friend. And so if you can find a way to authentically communicate what you're about in a unique way, and yes, I know it's frustrating because you just want to focus on music. I mean, as a business owner, I just want to focus on my business, but I have to use social media to get my name out there. Wouldn't you love to just do the podcast and not have to post it on social? I mean, that would be a fucking dream for me. Like as a journalist, like that's what I want to do, but I have to use social. And so, finding a way, like for me, what really was like a huge unlock for me and what started to have my social media take off, which was just this year, like it started to take off, is I started doing these label profiles where I would take a label, like Paradise, or that's a party series, Paradise. I think it's a label too. He has Hot Creations in Paradise, Jamie Jones. And I profiled it and talked about how it went from this one room party to now multiple festivals around the world, how Jamie Jones has scaled authenticity. And then I that video did like the most numbers any of my socials ever done. And I'm like, wow, this is scratching the itch for me as a former journalist because I'm telling this story, but it's also doing well on social and getting people into the funnel to see what else I'm about. I did it again with Afterlife, with Solid Grooves, and experts only. And it's like, it's been amazing. The response to those videos has been overwhelming. I really enjoy putting them together. I enjoy sending it to my editor to like make really cool edits to it. It's fulfilling, and it doesn't make me money, but it does get people into the pipeline to see what else I'm doing. And a lot of people have said, I found you through this video and now I'm listening to your podcast. And as you know, having a podcast at some point can be a money-making venture with sponsorships, XYZ.
Yes.
So finding a format that works for you and not focusing on the numbers. The numbers are great if they come, but like, how can you get those people off social and into what you're doing in real life? And for me, that's the podcast. And for an artist, that could be, you know, you have your own pop-up series on the beach, like in the summer, or like whatever it is. I'm interviewing in a couple weeks this guy who, I don't want to butcher his name. I think it's Sarat Music. He was a drone pilot, and he started hosting these sunrise sessions on the pier at North Avenue Beach in Chicago, and they're free. They start at like 5:30 in the morning, and he's got hundreds of people coming out to them, and through that, he's leading people to his SoundCloud to hear the songs he's producing, the music he's making. So, and he takes beautiful drone imagery of it. So it all connects. So that's what I'm trying
It
to
all
say.
connects.
Find something that's gonna be sustainable for you and double down on it, and don't worry about the numbers.
100%. And I think that, yeah, it's something where, kind of bring it back to the beginning of my conversation, I kind of made a statement that so many artists are very tunnel visioned. And when they first start this, because they're kind of experience or the artist they look up to or the artist they may know in their community, and they go, well, I'm going to start building my local community and I'm going to release tracks, and then I'm going to get picked up by a label, and the label's going to lead me to a manager, and then the manager is going to lead me to an agent, and then we're all going to like ride into the sunset to Kinetic Field and like set off fireworks.
Yeah.
And it's not that way hardly ever. And I think that with that tunnel vision that a lot of us impose, we often miss opportunities that will lead us to the same destination. So I really liked how you just said that it's kind of finding, you don't necessarily have to be the TikTok DJ in front of your phone that's going into CapCut and zooming in and editing and making the video shake and then turning it a different color. If you find something like having a podcast or throwing a pop-up series or doing something that your other passions in life bring you joy, that you can kind of then turn into another, motor on your project, that's what you make the additional content out of. And it's also so much more than ever in a time where the labels are asking the songs to be shorter. The labels asking the videos that you're promoting the song to be shorter. And now we've gone from the minute videos on social media to 30 seconds to 15 seconds to literally just hitting when the drop comes in and seeing if people like the song before they even know the name of it. It's so much like those super fans and those people who will buy the t-shirt and buy the ticket and buy the meet and greet package. They just hold so much more value. And someone said to me one time, I can't remember who it was. It was in a larger house artist camp. And I don't know if it was Torn Foot. I don't know who it was, but they just said, an artist can't choose their fans choose them. And I think like I found that so much to be true, because when you look at like the big corporatized festivals like Las Vegases of the world or the Lalas of the world, and you have an artist and you're like, oh, well, their crowd fucking sucks. Like, we know that crowd is going to be a mess. And then you go to another artist and they're like, we know that this crowd is always going to watch out for each other, always going to love one another. It's also as like you as an individual, which it totally at one point can spiral out of control if a variety of things happen, which they definitely have, I think, in some of the larger DJs in our market. But having that like identification of who do you want as a fan in your crowd is also really important to growth. And I think as well as like an online social media following. Like if you're just posting X amount of content every day, it's going to attract X amount of followers that maybe it's for your looks or maybe it's for the educational content that you're putting out. Something that I really loved about Emma, that we've had these conversations, because like in 2022, 2023, I started to work with my first bout of advertisers, and I'm all about having very transparent conversations. Doesn't really matter if anybody hears it. But when I started working with advertisers in the electronic space that weren't audio focused, that weren't like engineering or VSTs or, Ableton products. They were more like Liquid IV or, the Hydro Pack series that we see, or, more of like the rave clothing. It was very much so like, we know that your audience is ravers, and we know that the people who listen to your stuff are going to the shows where our products are there, but your numbers aren't where we want them to be, because I'm getting compared to influencers who have millions and millions and millions of followers, but only a percentage of those followers are going to raves and are actually buying the tickets to go and
Right.
potentially buy their products. So it's like this huge paradox of, do we want the super fan, or do we want just the crossing numbers that go in one year and right out the other?
Yeah,
And
it's
you know?
optics. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And I relate to this struggle. Like, I'm going through it right now, trying to find brands to work with that understand the unique value I bring. And I think I mean, you as an artist, though, you have a little more chips in the bucket, I think, for like, okay, well, there's crossover here because I could also, maybe wear this product to a show or like whatever. But like, it's still very difficult to get most traditional brands to understand the value, but I don't want to work with those types of brands anyway that just look at numbers. Like, I want to work with brands because we do have to financially sustain ourselves. Like, I always laugh when like I do a brand deal and the ad shows up and it's like, oh yeah, she's just trying to sell us a product. I'm like, in this particular video, yes. And that is why it's marked as branded content, because I have to pay my bills just like you. That
Yeah.
being said, I only work with partners where it's like I would actually use their product. Like, I have to be a fan. And that's a slippery slope, I think, for a lot. And even artists, because brand deals are part of the, like, I tell artists, like, you can eventually get brand deals, as part. I know John Summit did something with, I don't remember, it was like Sony or something, like a big
Yeah.
JBL, I don't remember. But but it can be a slippery slope because you could be offered potentially a lot of money. And in the beginning, when I was more, because I used to be more typical like influencer, I was doing like kind of a bunch of different lifestyle type content on TikTok.
Mhm.
I did get brand deals with like IPL hair removal devices where I'm like, $500 is pretty good. And I wasn't like running to the store to buy something like this, but it's nice to have. But then I realized, I was like, okay, I don't like love this product. So like making this ad for them is like, nah, and so I've lost income from niching down even further, but I know that like it's going to contribute to my overall goal. Like, I need to be very specific about my brand. So yeah, so that's definitely an avenue that artists can take. They just have to evaluate it just like they would a gig. Does this gig align with like is this who I am as an artist, like
Mhm.
playing this type of show, or like, to this type of crowd or whatever. So it's all about choices. And the more fire you get under you and like the more people you start to pop off or whatever, a lot of opportunities will come. Not all opportunities are created equal. Not all money is the same color green. Like, you really have to be tapped into your intuition to make those decisions. And yeah, I mean, it's something you learn as you get older and with experience too. You're gonna
Absolutely.
fuck up a few times, but everybody does. It's part of the process.
100%. And I think that like definitely brings it full circle. You literally took the words out of my mouth, as like taking a brand deal with a brand that doesn't exactly align with you, but puts $1,000 in your pocket, versus taking a tour or taking a show that maybe doesn't paint you in the best light or sonically doesn't match, but you need the money. It all just goes back to, okay, are you going to get that side hustle where you don't have to worry about money, and you can, because the more time, the power of no is so important. And I wish I knew that definitely earlier, because I remember when I was like 23, 24, and it was kind of like any opportunity you got, especially when you've chosen to make this at that point, the scope of your life is, and your life experience is so tiny, it still is tiny at 28, that you're just like, of course I'll do it. Of course. Like, this is so cool. And this is X, Y, and Z. And then you realize, like, the more that you kind of put your foot down, the more that you just take a little bit of a centimeter up in your value. The more that you
Yep.
say no, you take a little bit of a centimeter up. And then the people that you really want to work with, the positions that you really want to take on the tour, the festival slots that you really want to have that come with that same growth will come so much easier. Because I will always say, it's kind of crazy because it's like, no one's ever an overnight cessation. Like, it's so rare. Like, it really doesn't happen. Like, I can't think of a single artist in my mind where I'm really like, you really came out of nowhere and I've never seen you before.
Yeah.
And now you're playing EDC. Like, that never really happens. And everyone has, like, I always tell my Patreon students to go to the bottom of somebody's SoundCloud and see how shitty their music was when they first started.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the platforms that they hardly ever clean up. They'll clean up the Instagram, they'll clean up the
Yeah.
Spotify.
Uh-huh.
SoundCloud doesn't get touched. And I'm just like, everybody starts somewhere. But I also get, like, the other turn and flip of the coin where you see a lot of these projects that just .com to Marshmallow is a very good example. You see a lot of these projects that are established and they kind of have this huge growth period, and then they kind of disappear, and they either come out with like a huge new rebrand or a different name or a different whatever, and they just have it down packed. Because I think that there's so many things that even if somebody waves a flag in front of you and says, don't do this, when you are so like hungry with opportunity and new and a little bit naive and just so over like zealous with passion, most things you will not say no to. And
Right.
that's why I think it goes to, I would love to hear your thoughts before I like go. I feel like I could talk to you forever, which is
Me
difficult.
too.
That's the power of the podcast.
Yeah.
But about starting to identify when you need a team and who are the right people to put on those teams. Yeah, it's
Love that
really
question.
difficult.
Yeah, I do love that question though. Because like you said before, creatives are control freaks and we're perfectionists and we want to do everything ourselves.
Mhm.
It is an amazing exercise in just release and letting go if you can bring someone on and not micromanage them. And it's also a muscle that most people will need to flex to grow. I would say, like just from a logistical standpoint, when you start to have a little bit of disposable income, instead of, and of course, treat yourself, go on vacation. If you're working hard, like don't deny yourself that. But I really encourage people to put it back into the business. And what I mean by that is figuring out what are the things that you hate to do and that you're bad at. Cause like there's this like nexus. I never get it right, but it's like things that you love to do and you're good at, things that you like to do and you're good at, things that you don't like to do and you're good at, and things that you hate and you're bad at. Pick those things first, the bottom two tiers, right? And the things that you hate and that you're bad at, and the things that you hate and you're good at, and outsource those first. I used to love video editing as a journalist. Like I had to do it myself, but I am good at it, but I realized how much time it was taking, so it made me hate it. And so I outsourced that first. In the beginning, I had a social media manager who helped me with a lot of my posting. And then eventually I actually brought her onto one of my client accounts because I needed to take the money that I was paying her to reinvest in another area of the business. And so really it's figuring out like, what are the things that are just taking you away from what you're doing best, and outsourcing those so you get your time back. But also making sure that like when you outsource it, you all of a sudden don't know what their process is. Like you need to be tapped in so that if that person decides they're going to raise their rates or they're going to move on to another client or whatever it is, you don't want to be like left hanging. But those are the number one things. Like once you start to have money aside, and like there's people like finding freelancers can be difficult because I feel like most people kind of like operate in the shadows, and you only really see, like, if you type in like video editor near me, you're going to get the companies that are, $10,000 a month, like whatever. So you need to start like tapping into your network, but there's so many different people at different skill levels and price points. Like I have found someone to work with at every point in my journey, also for the clients I have for my agency. So I would say that that's like the first thing that you should do, because the goal is to only focus on the 1%. And the last thing I'll say is like there's this concept between that is working on the business versus in the business. And in the business is you're like doing the day-to-day grind, like scheduling all the emails, you're doing the invoicing, you're doing obviously the music production, you're doing the socials, whatever. Working on the business means the long-term vision. Like what are the things that are going to move the needle? Like that one task you can do every day that's going to get you leaps and bounds ahead. And it is very hard to shift gears in this field. My husband is a business owner, but he owns a remodeling company. And in less than a year's time, he went from doing painting, drywall, tile installation, roof, whatever himself, to actually hiring out a team where he does not do any manual labor anymore. And I'm so proud of him, but it is not feasible in the industry that we are in. Like it's just different. And that's not an excuse. It is just much harder because money is harder to come by in creative fields than it is something that's cut and dry, like remodeling homes. And so if you can keep that in mind and work towards that goal of being able to work on the business versus in the business, if you can always keep that top of mind, you will get there. But if you just get kind of like caught up in the minutia of the day to day, it's going to take you a lot longer.
Can you give me an example for someone who may be like starting out, they're getting traction, they're releasing independently with strong numbers, or they're releasing on a label, maybe they're a part of a few tours, and maybe they don't have anyone on their team yet, or they have maybe one person who isn't necessarily playing to their strengths. What's an example of working, I think working, in the business, exactly what you said. You're scheduling your studio time in, or you're doing your collab sessions, or you're scheduling your emails. What is an example of working on the business to get you to that next goal?
Yeah. So if your goal is starting your own label, having your own tour, throwing your own event, playing at a specific festival, what are the actions? Like if it is playing at a festival, like you have a goal that you are going to play EDC or Desert Hearts or whatever it is next year. Let's say it's Desert Hearts because I just love those guys. I'm partial to them. What are the things that will get you noticed by them? Is it showing up to their events, their smaller events, and planning out, okay, feasibly I can go to this event because, I live one state over or whatever. I'll take the time to introduce myself. Okay, well, I want to make sure that they see I'm there. So I'm going to reach out and say, hey, like big fan. This is, I've been to these shows. I would love to say hi while I'm there. Is it analyzing what kind of lineups that they've had in the past and maybe seeing where you fit in? I'll use this guy, Drew Daps, as an example. He's playing on the Desert Hearts Festival lineup this year. He had been going forever. I had him on my podcast. I also had Mikey Line on my podcast, who talked about how Drew Daps showed up all the time. He set up this little fingerboarding skate park that he does. It's part of his brand. And they noticed him for just being there, not asking for anything, just showing up, being part of the community, adding value to the other campers. So is it something like that, right? Like what are all the components that you can do, the actions that you can take to get on that lineup? So it's like just your vision board, right? It's like, what are the steps you take to your vision board versus like, making all the things that are important too, like the social media content, whatever. But like, if you have a big goal, what are the steps that are going to take you there versus getting sucked into the day of reopening, a track that you've worked on 700 times and it's just driving you nuts, whatever it is. All those things are important, yes, but they're not going to be the big move the needle goals. Like, re-editing of a video 700 times is not going to get you anywhere. But those big actions are.
Absolutely. I know. I really respect that answer. And it definitely makes me feel better sometimes, because I think as an artist, especially with the way I'm just built, everybody's built so differently. And me loving my home and my space I've created, it's really easy for me to be like, oh, but I have so many things to do at home. You know,
Right.
like I have this project and I'm working co-production for this person and I need to edit a podcast and I need to edit this live series
And
versus
you need to do your laundry and
and
your
I need
dog
to do my
needs to be walked.
laundry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I need to do all of that versus like, hey, Lizzie, 4 days before EDC, we would like you to come out. Can you make it happen? God damn it. I really don't want to, but I know it's going to be worth it. And then I go for a day and I'm like, you know what? I just saw 100 people I needed to see. And I just
Right.
touched base with so many individuals and I knocked it all out in 24 hours. And every dollar that was actually out of my own pocket was like, I think there's such like a balance and both are justifiably important and both are justifiably work and it's working on the business and working in. Okay, one more before I let you go.
Okay.
Because I'm trying to keep them to an hour because I used to do this whole like Rogan thing where I would go for 4 hours and then I'm like,
Oh my God.
I can't do that. We just need to 1 hour. That's how people like to listen. If people, I'm definitely like really, it's like a two-sided question. I'm really curious about, like you said that you were working with subcontractors and you kind of have this agency of your own that I assume is handling marketing, startup, consultation for artists. Is that kind of what that entails?
Well, you might be like 5 steps ahead of me. I am shifting my business model. I actually work with a lot of people outside the music industry simply
Ooh.
because they have nice sized budgets.
Yeah, that would be correct.
More of the boring businesses. Yeah, but no, I am heading in that direction. I'm putting the cart before the horse a little bit. But yes, that is what's going to happen.
That's so exciting. You'll be so good. I like see that in like you speaking and then like obviously like what else I see online and in your other podcasts. That's literally what I idealize for you. Aside from, I also think you would be a kick-ass artist manager.
Thank you.
With the right person, maybe like a girl artist because
Yes, that's
girls
actually a
can
good
kind of
point.
handle themselves. I like
Yeah.
with the babysitting thing. It's so funny because I've been like 2.5 years ago, I was touring like crazy and I was always like, no, I don't need a TM. I'm not paying a TM. Like, I'm fine. This is what I need. Like, this is
Yeah.
what I need help with. Because girls are very self-sufficient.
Yeah,
And then
good
second
point.
end of that is like if people want to get involved in the community, I'm sad I didn't get to touch on the fact that you've done Winter Music Conference and you've created Chicago Nexus. And like this is a huge thing that you're starting to see. Still, there are so few events that do this, but you're starting to see it a bit more. If people want to get involved in the community, like what would you just tell them to do? Like,
Yeah.
how would you tell them to approach it?
Yeah, just start reaching out. I've had people reach out to me asking if they could volunteer or like intern for Nexus. And I'm like, hell yeah, thank you. Cause that saves me from like having to put a call out there, right? So starting to show up, see where you could be. And when you want something from someone because you want to grow, be ready to offer something specific. So like I hired one of my video editors. He sent me the most amazing message. I was actually using a different editor who like just got too busy. So I had to cycle him off. And this editor reached out to me at the perfect time saying, "Hey, love this video. I'm a video editor and I can help you focus on more of what you love by taking XYZ off your plate. Would you like to set up a call?" He said it a lot more eloquently than that, but I'm like,
Awesome.
holy shit, yes. And he had the portfolio to back it up. I was like, instead of someone just saying, and like I understand that it's coming from a good place, but if you just reach out to someone and say, "Hey, I love what you do. Let me know if I can help." That's like putting homework on a busy person. I don't want to have to find something for you to do, but if you come approach me or someone else in the community, or you want to start your own event or whatever it is, and you feel like you don't have the resources to do it on your own yet, and you just kind of want to help, just say, "Hey, I have volunteered at 6 a.m. group raves for the past year in LA, and I'm really good at like crowd control, security, like just let your skill set lead the way." And the person that you want something from, like to help with whatever or learn from them, might say, "You know what? I don't have anything like that right now, but I do need this, which is pretty similar. Are you open to this? Or let me keep your information on file because something might come up." I have a file. Anyone who's reached out to me with a good enough pitch, I best believe I have you on file because if something comes up, and it always does, I will be reaching out. And so lead with something specific. And even if it's not like we don't have anything right now, something will come up in the future and you will be remembered as the person who took the initiative to say, "I want to be involved." So like, here's how I can help. That goes such a long way with people. And then also like just start throwing like low risk, low overhead meetups. Like again, West End playing basketball. Like if you have decks and you can find a way to get them to like a basketball court, like that's, you're not going to be bothering neighbors or like whatever it is. My first event series that I had with friends was called Rooftop Drops. And we played on different rooftops around Chicago during COVID because you could be outside. And, and then it led to me doing all these other things. So, like, yeah, leading with your skill set and just trying low hanging fruit first and seeing what it leads to.
Love it. Yeah. I think a lot of it is just putting yourself out there and remembering that, the worst somebody can say is no. And and then you're like right back where you started. And,
right.
And most of the time, if you have a good presentation or a good pitch, just like you said, you'll save it for later.
Oh my God. I will always save it. Like I literally hired someone on the spot because of their good pitch and it was the right time. You never know. You might be hitting someone at exactly the right time and there's no better feeling than that.
And I think from just the last pong on like as a piggyback on that, from an artist perspective, I used to get like these messages that people would want to like make a t-shirt or like, hey, I have a t-shirt shop and like I would love to collaborate with you on a t-shirt. And I would always just kind of be like, wait, is this like weird? Like, is this legit? Or when I first started doing my podcast, I would have people who would reach out who would say, hey, I would love to just like sit in when you're recording podcasts and like make sure the recording doesn't stop or like make sure the lighting looks good or something like that.
Angel.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. And for a long time I was like, so do they need to get paid or like what's going on? And they just want to be there. Yep. Be okay as an artist when people like believe in you and like have the courage to reach out to you. Obviously vet them, obviously make sure they have something to back it up. But if like they're another artist in your community and they're like, well, you can like introduce me name to name to some of your podcast guests and like maybe you can give me advice on stuff. And then I can in turn, I do production for a TV show so I can help you here. Do it. Because that's how you start to create a team of people who really care and like you guys can all kind of help each other and like really build from there. Because then I'm like, okay, well, now we have advertisers coming back into the situation and you're helping me pitch them. And when I get an ad deal, guess who gets paid too? You do.
Exactly.
So it goes like full circle. But I could talk to you for hours. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We'll definitely have to do this again.
Yes, I'll have you on mine.
Like perfect. We'll have to make it like an annual thing because I think that I'm mainly, and again, a whole goal for this next year is kind of still trying to expand on the range of guests that I'm having. I have a lot of artists on and I get great artist stories and we talk about the dawn, we get all nerdy and we talk about tour life and, pop culture and X, Y, and Z and DJ drama. But I think that my primary demographic is really a lot of people who want to do this and not necessarily be artists. Like they just want to be in this business because it's such a cool industry to be in. So there's so much value in this conversation. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.